Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Healing Embodied podcast. My cheeks hurt because of how big I'm smiling, because I'm so excited to introduce today's guest. We have the Dr. Nicole LePera, aka the Holistic Psychologist, here with us today to talk about blazing your own trail. So, for those who don't know, Dr. Nicole LePera has three books and am I allowed to say you're working on
You
your fourth?
you are allowed to say.
Yes. Is working on her fourth, is a two times New York Times best-selling author. Like, excuse me. Has an incredible online community called the Self Healer Circle with over 20,000 members that offers insane amounts of support and resources for people around the world. 9 million point something followers on Instagram, where she gives so much education. 44 million views on YouTube. Just someone who has blazed her own trail and made waves in the field of mental health. And I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Well,
Welcome.
thank you, Chelsea. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to not only dive into this conversation with you, but connect with your beautiful community.
Oh, thank you so much. So, I would love to hear your journey. I know a little bit from what you've shared on social media of how, obviously you got your doctorate in, I believe, clinical psychology, but correct me if I'm wrong. And then you went on this journey where you were like, this doesn't fit who I am and actually what I believe. And I'd love to hear your story of where you started as far as your career and how you ended up here.
It's funny, even hearing, thank you for the way you very beautifully described myself in my journey. Even hearing some of the descriptors like trailblazer, waves, it's an interesting experience to hear because on the one hand, looking back, of course, throughout my childhood and my experience, I'm like, okay, yeah, I always kind of did things a little different. In my family, I was the child who looked a little different, acted a little different, was very much on a different career path than my siblings and my parents included. But in more ways, I was also the child that became the adult that loved following the rules, that didn't like and had so many deep rooted beliefs about all of the reasons why not to go out of the bounds or out of the boundaries that had already been created. So it's crazy to see and have lived the journey of kind of living into the part of me that I think had been there all along that was like, you know what, these boxes that I think we all have that part, they don't fit us. And nowhere was that really more clear to me. And this is, of course, not me when I speak about the field I have come from, that has absolutely evolved very greatly, even over this last decade, I do so just from a very objective, perspective of the very real limitations. Because as far and as long as I can remember, I was so fascinated in humanity and helping people. So I marched down the path at the time that was available, which was to get the degree of clinical psychologist. Because even back then, there was no other way to practice. There was no other licensure designation that would allow you to be the clinician, right? The doctor in the room. And that's what I believed I had wanted to be. I also, though, loved the idea of research and teaching and all of the other things that came along with the PhD title and license that I would eventually end up getting. But for me, it was, I really want to be that clinician in the room. I think driven by many of us, right? I want to help other people who are struggling just like myself so that we can all feel differently. And so, several years then being very dedicated to finding my way to the PhD program, doing so in New York City, getting, in my experience and belief, a more widened view of the field itself. We did not just learn at the gold standard at the time being cognitive behavioral. I had the opportunity to work with really a really predominant attachment lab and to learn about psychoanalysis and childhood. So again, I really started to hear and learn all of these different influences that then landed me in Philadelphia, my hometown, if you will, where I thought I was going to hang my shingle, start up the private practice, and live forevermore. And several years into the practice, instead of feeling empowered that now 10 years in, I finally got the license and I'm practicing, and very gratefully, people were coming through my door and they were coming back through my door week after week. But I started to feel the complaint that I would then hear over and over again from my clients or my patients at the time, which was, I'm stuck. I'm not getting better. I almost feel worse. I'm coming in here, I'm talking about my problems, and nothing is changing. And if I am being perfectly honest, having been in therapy myself at that time, having had many years of it, having been in analysis myself, thinking I understood myself and feeling the same as my clients, which was that no insight or awareness was seemingly able to help us break those patterns. So that just began for me. It didn't begin as a kind of empowered passion project. It really began at a low point where I was questioning myself, my profession. I dedicated all of this time and energy to doing this thing that I thought was going to bring me not only financial security, but fulfillment. And it was doing the complete opposite. I was feeling burnt out. I was feeling drained. And quite honestly, at that time, I had no idea why. And that then began a big exploratory journey, of course, where I learned about holistic wellness in the body and the nervous system. Then, of course, we can dive into all aspects of that, but which really then inspired me to wonder, is there a different path? Because at that time, again, I still didn't know what is out there. Can I, as a psychologist, begin to talk about what I'm learning in terms of my body, my nervous system? Is that even appropriate? And again, a couple years ago, 5+ years ago now, those boxes were very constraining. The field was almost yelling from the rafters that no, it wasn't appropriate, that we were very limited in what we can talk about. So that then is, hearing myself described as having blazed a trail. I mean, objectively speaking, there were many moments where what I was beginning to embody, not only in my own personal journey, but in my practice, was beginning to push the limits and boundaries of what was currently at least operating at the time.
Yeah, I thank you for speaking to all this. And I think you're right on that the field has evolved so much in the last 10 years because it was almost like there was like a gatekeeping of who could talk about what. And like the boxes were very rigid and very small. And so for you to even be able begin asking the question like, is this possible? Can I do this? Even as you said, as growing up as kind of a rule follower, I call it like good girl programming, like, oh, like I can't break the rules, but yet you were in this inner experience where you couldn't not question. Like there was no turning back, it sounds like.
Right. There was no turning back. And again, the teaching was so limited and so constraining for
Yeah.
so long. And yet there was, and I was very sensitive and still am with now the advent, right, of social media and essentially the fact that we all have power to speak, right?
Yeah.
We can all set up an online shingle, if you will, whether or not we have a degree after our name or a license or not, and we can begin to share our ideas. So obviously, 5+, 6+ years ago, when I now, as a psychologist with a title, right, that I do know comes with a listening, a credential, right, a kind of a testament behind it that I know what I'm saying. I
Mm,
understand why, as a society, we were beginning now to reckon with, well, how appropriate is it? Do we need a limit? Is it okay for anyone to say anything with letters, without letters? And then what can we say? And I understand then the standard or the rules, so to speak, were landing at that time on, well, what we were learning in school. So then it was understandable, right, that I was left with, well, if I'm being perfectly honest, Chelsea, I didn't learn about this in school. I didn't learn about
uh-huh.
the body. I didn't learn about nutrition. I didn't learn about the gut. I had no idea that we needed to know about any of those things. The nervous system, outside of a great concept that, right, yeah, connects our brain and our body and it runs our body and our mind, we really didn't
Yeah.
emphasize or explore how foundational these systems physiologically are
Yeah.
for our mental wellness. So I'm very sensitive to the question itself that
Mm.
even still, is applicable today. Who can say what is appropriate? And I understand kind of how the field was needing to kind of land on what schooling was teaching. And I'm just so grateful that schooling has expanded to begin to include some of these conversations, though one of the reasons why I now live virtually, so to speak, in a community-based environment, I'm very sensitive to the fact that our evolution here in some states does not mirror the evolution that is not even across our country at large,
Yep.
but definitely across our world. And meaning a lot of people aren't having access to this information and therefore aren't having the tools and the resources to utilize it in any way.
Whew. This is, yeah, you're speaking to something that I've noticed too, which is like, especially in the US, the restrictions are different state to state.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's like, how do you both honor your profession, your field, your licensure, ethics, blah, blah, blah. And also you're like, but this information
Mhm.
has the potential to literally change the way people live their lives. And I imagine, I mean, from what I know about your story, it's like you just kind of started sharing what you were learning about the body and somatics and healing. You started sharing it on social media. Like, this is what I'm learning. Tell me more about like how that started and evolved.
Well, that began behind the scenes before it even began
Yeah.
in social media, meaning I was starting to kind of have my own dark night of the soul, really reevaluate what I knew about myself, let alone my profession. And the forever student in me like dove down all of the rabbit holes of research. And I really started to come up with, okay, this is more of a holistic conversation that
Mm,
we now need to have. Very gratefully, my mother, who struggled with chronic pain and chronic illness her whole life, was very much a proponent of whole. I mean, she tried traditional and holistic, but I was aware of the holistic world, so to speak, in the more traditional medical sense. And then I started to wonder, well, why aren't we applying that? I mean, I remember even the first day I was talking with my partner, Lolly, who I would share all of just what I was coming, the challenges I was having with work and life in general, and also, these kind of questions that I was coming to mind. And I remember the one day I'm like, there has to be a holistic psychology, right? Like, why didn't I go to that school? And I'm like, boop, boop, and I Google it, and her and I are looking dumbfounded, and we're like, no one is teaching this or branding this, or there's no program that is thought
wow.
to think, but yet we have holistic
Well,
medicine,
yeah, yeah.
wellness. So I started to kind of formulate, conceptualize, kind of obviously, as I think many of us do, experiment on myself, finally
Mm-hmm.
start to make some traction. So for me, it was lifelong of anxiety, believing the
Mm-hmm.
traditional model that I didn't have the right neurotransmitters in my brain, seeing similar patterns and symptoms in my family. I remember 20 years old, sitting at the dinner table, just got back from, a semester at a college when I knew I was going to be a psychologist. So I was in some psych class and I sat my family down and I said, I just need you all to know that due to a neurotransmitter deficit in my brain, I am now on SSRIs and I will be forever. And that is okay because they are going to, redistribute the neurotransmitters and help me manage my anxiety. So
Mm.
I very much thought that was the conversation that I would be able to have. So when, of course, I met with this whole holistic wellness and world and nervous system regulation tools and began to gradually, utilize some of those in my own life, I began to actually, for the first time, begin to separate myself
Yes.
from that anxiety. So before I even looked about telling anyone else about what I was doing, I was kind of doing on my own and getting
Yeah.
really clear that, I mean, at this time, I was still entertaining being Sigmund Freud with a couch in my office.
Yeah.
I was literally going down the training to be an analyst. I thought the body, no, we're just going to lay my client down, my patient down. They're just going to free associate. And so I was having a crisis of not only
Wow.
personal, but I was like, well, I don't know if I can practice in this way. And again,
Mm,
not to say that talking and psychoanalysis and free association isn't part of the journey 100%, but I was starting to see how much was being left out. And so sharing this, living this, embodying this truth,
mm.
seeing how social media was just beginning, individuals were just starting to use it to share personal messaging.
Yeah.
And Lolly honestly was kind of at the forefront of really just, thinking I'm great as a person, as a clinician, really celebrating me, but also seeing how unhappy and unfulfilled and how unaligned my life had been. So she was like, I love you and I don't want you to be miserable forever. Right. If you're truly not happy, I understand you put a lot of time and money and effort, but I will support you doing
Mm.
whatever it is that you want to do. But, I do want you to know that there is possibly, she's very much not in system of
Yeah.
indoctrination. School was not her forte. So she was like, there might be other ways that you can begin to speak about this.
Yeah.
And I shared that because there's a lot in my own life and my own conditioning, and even thinking about, right, kind of blazing an own trail. I did not want to be visible. I did not want to be seen. I did not want to be the spokesperson necessarily. I saw value in my message. I mean, at this
Yeah.
point, I was literally transforming my own life. And the clients that I was starting to work with in this way were, really starting to make shifts. But for me, being visible, being on camera, beginning to speak about things that I was very clear were out of the boundaries that I was taught was not a comfortable experience, to say the least, for me. Still, in moments,
Yeah.
isn't. And in the beginning, honestly, resulted in a lot of self censorship. While I
Hmm.
did talk holistically, even just looking back, I talked about it in much different ways. I left certain parts out, I watered down certain
Yep.
statements, and I'm much more able to be direct, matter of fact, say for what I think it is, and of course welcome you to disagree at any point.
Yeah, and this was actually something I wanted to hear from you about was like what were some of the challenges of like when you went from, okay, here's the norm, here's the known path, here's the box, here's who I'm told I should be and what I should do with this education, like here's this, and then oh my gosh, like I'm feeling this pull, like like you said, that dark night of the soul where you can't unknow what you now know. You can't go back. And so now you're starting to step out into the unknown. You're starting to do something that at the time was very, very new. Like you said, like social media has evolved so much. Not a lot of people were talking about this to the degree that we are today. But, and you said, the fears of visibility. Like, what were some of the big challenges that came when you were like, you know what? I'm going to trust this pull inside of me.
I mean, every area
Yeah.
had a challenge in so many senses, from my individual self, right? Having to really come to terms with thinking differently about humanity. Obviously, that's very much a foundation of the work that I would then and had learned to do clinically. So, kind of shedding all of these layers of knowing and understanding of personhood, of the work and the clinician or the type, and all of the money investment in years, right? It was kind of an unlearning of all of that. It was then a challenge of beginning to present myself or just speak aloud what my beliefs were. That, again, because I knew that they would challenge other professionals in my field. Again, a little bit mixed up in there is my own conditioning. I like to be liked. I don't like to actually cause waves or make waves, whatever the saying is, right? I'm much more of the appeaser, the say what you want to hear. So now I'm really being faced with, my options are say what you want to hear, which is not what I believe to be true or
Mm.
I believe to be valuable for someone else to hear. So those were moments of conflict at every turn.
Wow.
There was a lot of conflict, just logistically speaking, around finances. At that point, Lolly and I were married. I was the sole income earner. So here I am, faced with quite literally wanting to change how I made money for us to sustain a livelihood. And there were many kind of bumps along the way in terms
Mm.
of transitioning, because I had this kind of other moment of, logistically speaking, right? We all need money to live. I need to make sure that we can continue to fund life. And at the same time, I knew that if I keep working in a way that wasn't aligned, what message would I then be sending the
Yep.
universe? Is this based in fear? Am I like not trusting that, right? If I walk into this unknown, that will then be compensated financially. So
Yep.
I had a lot of the logistical, wait, I have money for bills, but a lot of the psychological kind of was coming up too, which was, what do I want to be showing commitment to in
Yeah.
action and energy? And then there were the very real moments when my fears came to fruition, when I said something that someone did have or take issue with in the world. And then that would obviously just kind of amplify the conflict, the resistance. And my tendency in those moments isn't to fight or to stand in assertiveness with what I think. It's
Yep.
often to just yes away the conflict, or to remove myself and want to leave the situation entirely. And so it just became, so many moments ultimately of challenge and of growth for me as an individual, because again,
Mm,
my conditioned way of coping in these moments was to do the opposite of what at this point myself, my passion was saying, no, Nicole, that's not aligned anymore. Like in this moment, it really is, it's even beyond you, that
yeah.
this will be of benefit if you do stand in alignment with what you believe to be true, even when it's difficult, and especially when it's difficult.
And this is really incredible and speaks to your willingness to be uncomfortable because a lot of people are like, "Yes, I have a dream, I have a vision, I want to do this, I want to do this." But like you said, that calling will actually require you to shed so many identities, so many beliefs, so many patterns that have been familiar and safe and protective for you. And so bringing a vision to life, following a calling isn't just this like always this fun, exciting, oh my gosh. It's like there's going to be moments where you're like, I want to run away. Like, what have I done? What am I doing? And like you said, these moments where your calling, your passion is asking you to be someone that you have not been and how easy it is for us to then default to the familiar because it's more comfortable, it's more safe than to be in the discomfort long enough to become the person that we need to be to bring the passion forward. And so I just like I'm seeing that so much in your journey.
Yes. Well, I'm shaking my head, Chelsea, because I think, and I lived at least by this belief, expectation, hope, at least to some extent, which is that a lot of us, myself included, we tend to want to wait
Mm,
to feel stirred, to feel moved,
yeah.
to feel like the person who can do the thing.
Mhm.
And I have come to, and life has come to teach me over and over and over again that while, yes, some of us are inspired to shift in a direction at a low or at a high, right? Something. But the reality of it is, I think for most of us, it is not, we don't feel the
Mm,
confidence in where we're going. We feel the uncertainty. We feel the lack of familiarity. We feel the fear. We don't feel as we expect or want to, or even some of us need to feel before we go. And that's why I'm always the first one giving and sharing from my own experience because I know how people now see me. They see me on cameras with a lot of people alongside of them watching me. And
mhm.
so I like to, describe that what you think you are seeing isn't necessarily
Yeah.
what I've been feeling along the way. Like it was even, I was convinced to some extent to even be the holistic psychologist, however many years ago. And there are still a lot of moments where I'm not feeling as I might be presenting or
Yeah.
believed to be. I don't feel ready. I don't feel fully confident or secure in what I'm saying. It is hard for me to say. It's
Mm,
easier, let me put it this way, for me to say, sure, agree or disagree and be over there with it. I don't have to look or see it.
mm,
But then live that experience is a much different reality. So I often like to remind that what we think we see from someone else is often not
yeah.
their actual lived experience. And you have to, for whatever or however it is that you can move yourself into action
Yeah.
before you feel that state of readiness or even sometimes desire to keep going.
Yeah, and a lot of people they see external results. They see achievements, but they're not looking at who did that person have to become? What did they have to face? What did they have to overcome? What are the insecurities that they had to feel? What are the fears that had them shaking in their freaking boots in order to create that? They're like, "Oh, look at like they," and then it kind of strips away the whole human that you are. I imagine there's maybe been times like that where it's like, no, like, yes, I've done these things, but that's such a in a lot of ways, that's such a small part of my journey. I'm hearing like your journey is what you've had to face and who you've had to become and what you've had to embody in order to bring this body of work to the world.
Yeah, it's so funny even hearing you describe that. I've so much of my conditioning is I've learned to perform
Yeah.
academically, athletically, the things that came very easily and natural to me. I gravitated toward those and I never looked back.
Hmm.
The moments where my mom was very attentive, was celebrating me. And also, at least with academics, those are the successes that I was indoctrinated and taught would lead to the financial security and the right security into adulthood. So
Hmm.
that's what I saw very early that I was quite quote unquote good at. And that's what I continued. So it's ironic to some extent that in a way I am still performing, right? And I'm showing the world accomplishments. 4 books in March, you'll see another book come out, right? They get rewards or awards, New York Times designations, but exactly like you're kind of acknowledging, for me, it's not just about that.
Yeah.
For me, the evolution and the wisdom and the growth is coming in the moments where I'm
Mm.
not just saying, look at me, I got another award, where I'm sharing the reality of these difficult moments that still continue, or where I'm not pushing myself forward. I mean, there are so many projects and things that I want to create and I want to see created in the world under my name or whatever the entity is before I'm done here. And
Mhm.
there have been a lot of moments, even over these past 5 years, where I'm like, so many ideas, but maybe now's not the time
Mm.
to create those ideas just yet. So for me, it's not just how many ideas and products and things can I put out into the world and resources, free or charged or whatever, that are going to create value and change in people's lives. For me, I feel like the healing is more of, can I have these ideas and maybe feel inspired and excited to do the things, but also can I meet myself
Yes.
with my own limitations, with my own, can I first ask myself, do I desire to put these things out into the world, or does someone else want them from me? Do I just want them because it's cool to say, hey, I have a third New York Times best-selling book. How fun. Or do I want that from that deeper, inspired place? So that becomes the first question with any opportunity. And I'm so grateful that I have many now, right? This has allowed me to continue to perform and to then be offered many opportunities to keep that performance going. But
Yeah.
before I just say yes, right, can I ask myself, is it aligned? And do I have the ability or capability or resources to execute?
And I imagine this takes a lot of inner awareness because I imagine people who get to this level of achievement and accomplishment, they confuse their sense of worth and identity with the productivity, with the achievements, with the performance. It's like being a high performer, high achiever is fine. It's amazing. But there's a difference between I'm grasping for my sense of worth and wholeness in the next achievement versus am I like, where is this desire to do this coming from? Is it coming from survival? Is it coming from I need to perform for my worth? Or is it coming from just genuine desire and creative inspiration? That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah. And I think that then there even becomes a self-fulfilling expectation, right?
Yeah.
If I did it once, so I have to do it again. Does it have to look exactly the same this next time I do the thing, whatever it is? And so you
Yeah.
can get very complicated, and identities can continue
Mm.
to be very interconnected with even passionate, purposeful
Yes.
doing. And I want to say something else to that really quickly is, I really want to make it clear that while yes, my doing is much more public, so to speak, I get saddened, and I don't want anyone to take away this idea that purpose and passion are only to exist in a public realm,
Yeah, that's good.
because so we all have a purpose and a passion and a connection to the world around us, even if that world is the size of our family, of our community, right? So I really want to be clear, while yes, I am representing obviously something that's much more visible to more people outside of even my own home, I do think and know that we all are, kind of purposeful in our own ways. But I think that's another way where we get complicated, right? We either set our own expectation because we did it like this before and this is how it
Mm.
looked, or we look at someone like me and say, well, no, Dr. Nicole's doing it like this. So
Yeah.
my little version of this doesn't compare. So now I'm going to talk myself out of what I'm actually driven to do.
Wow. Yeah, like if it can't be this big thing,
Yeah,
then it doesn't matter, or it's not significant, or it's not worth pursuing.
right.
When in reality, like pursuing any kind of purpose or passion is just what makes being alive as a human such a wonderful experience. No matter what the result looks like, it's the process. It's the looking within and feeling and connecting to that passion and purpose and then bringing it to the world in whatever way that looks like. It's just part of what makes being alive such a beautiful experience.
I couldn't agree more. In this newest book that will come out in March, it's called Reparenting the Inner Child. So as part of it, I created a developmental model of different aspects of development, ideally that occur in childhood slash throughout life. And
Mm.
then I map that on to reparenting, or what do we do when our needs were unmet? And this is so beautiful to hear and affirmative, because one of the kind of developmental areas that universally joins us all as human, if you're a human, you have a purpose. It is unique
Mm.
to us as an individual. And again, for some of us, it exists in our immediate communities. For other, it travels, more globally now that we have social media outside of us as it can, but it applies to each and every one of us. And I do believe that a lot of us, especially the high achievers like myself, I woke up in my 30s having checked all of the boxes
Mm.
and never having felt so empty and unfulfilled in my life, and then felt bad about myself even more, because who am I to quote unquote have everything and to not feel good about it or not feel
Yep.
fulfilled, especially when, right, someone down the block or next to me has so little compared to the opportunities that I've
Mm.
been given and have now available to me. All of that is true,
Mm.
but the disconnect, right, was because I was pursuing making choices, as many of us are, based on at what one time kept us safe or kept us belonged. Even though
Yeah.
now, right, I was belonged, I was in a community, there was people around me, but I never felt so separate and distanced, because I wasn't actually connected to me, to be connected to my
Mm.
purpose, to feel then truly connected to anyone or anything outside of me.
Yeah, and I think so many of us go through that almost like a rite of passage where we have to look at the choices we made and go, is this my conditioning? Is this what I've been told I should do, who I should be, what I should do in order to be safe, in order to belong? Or is this actually an expression of who I really am? And in order to find how do I find the expression of who I really am? We have to meet ourselves. We have to like go inside and get to know the person underneath all the layers of conditioning. And then we're able to access like what is that authentic purpose-led expression? And like you said, it can be a really scary thing to then go against the grain and challenge what your community has always said you should do, or your family has said you should do, or the field, the industry has said you should do. And yeah, some people find that journey earlier in life, some people find it later in life, but knowing that like it's available to everyone.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think we have, when we change, you're bringing up, I think, another part of the system that we all are embedded in. We find ourselves in relation with other people, oftentimes very well-meaning loved ones, whether they're our partners or our parents or our family or our community. And when we are doing different, right, we're already kind of going outside of those bounds. It's so, I think, natural to then activate or to trigger, right, a reaction in our very well-meaning loved ones, one that often isn't and doesn't feel supportive. And what I'll share with you, I remember clear as day, I started to think about this holistic model. I was kind of going through my own dark night of the soul, and I started to talk to my sister, who was raised by the same mother who taught us all about holistic wellness. So I start to say, can you believe that there's not a holistic psychology like world out there? And I really think this is the direction that this future is going in. And here's all the reasons why. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I'm doing myself. I'm sharing all this with my sister. And so I finally then land on drum roll. I think I'm going to go online, and I think I'm going to start to talk about holistic psychology. What do you think? And she looked at me and was like, I don't know if people are really ready for that. And my sister couldn't, I mean, she might as well have my jersey on from the moment I was born. She is my number one supporter, biggest fan, whether it was on a softball field, academically. She might as well be a mother to me. She celebrates me to the day is long. So this is a human who has and does show up in support of me. So in that moment, right, I want to just share this as well, because it wasn't that my sister lacked belief or support in me, right? A lot of us, I do think we share our ideas that are a little out of bounds with people, and we challenge them. We challenge their sense of reality, of normal, of what they're familiar with. Maybe then if our new choice, right, if a domino might impact them, now they're challenged by, well, what might this mean for my sister who's going to not work in the way that she used to? Will she be financially secure? Won't she? Will she change? Right. And then the reaction we receive is not the wholehearted support that we desperately need when we're being vulnerable and sharing with someone our idea and how we're going to do this new thing. And all we need is a little bit of cheerleading in our corner. And then sadly, we get very frustratingly sometimes like, I don't know if the world's ready for, I mean, now, so flash forward in time, she's, hugest fan still of now the holistic psychologist, couldn't shout from the rooftops, has books in her car and gives them to everyone she knows. Like, so is totally on board. But I remember that moment and I wanted just to speak to that now because we have to remember that we're sharing something that could be very unfamiliar and threatening and could indirectly or even directly impact our loved ones that very much might want to celebrate and support us on this new endeavor, but might just feel too challenged themselves or be too impacted by this new unfamiliar piece of information and realistically might actually then be impacted by the new choices that we're making.
I love that the conversation is going in this direction because one of the other questions I wanted to ask you is like, why do we think it's so difficult for people to embrace new ideas? Because I mean, this has happened with me. This has happened with some of my certification students. They go and tell their family, I'm going to start this new business. And the family's like, well, you should really think about this. And well, I don't know about that. So it's everything from that to people who will vehemently be like, this is harmful and terrible, and you're a bad person for even thinking about this. So, why is it so difficult for people to embrace new ideas, change, innovation?
Humanity struggles while we are equipped and wired to change until the moment we are no longer breathing in these bodies. Our bodies can create change at any moment of time. It really does go against, again, our nervous system and the predictability, the familiarity, and then the false sense of safety that even highly dysfunctional, negative, unsupportive outcomes give us, because that unknown, right, is very, very challenging to any human. So the second we suggest a new idea, immediately, right, we're now opening up the possibility of unknown. We don't know the outcome. We know the outcomes of all of these choices because we've lived those time and time again. We don't know the outcome of this, right? So at minimum, right, the person who's now receiving the new information from us that we're super excited about is in the land of the unknown. So they now, and then again, this is even beyond their relationship with us. Now it really becomes a question of how equipped are they in their body, in their nervous system to tolerate the unknown, which again was a capacity that was built in their own childhood with their own parents. And the answer for a lot of us, even adults, is not very. So they then, right, become activated because even just the uncertainty of not knowing what you're going to say next or do next is enough to activate their own threat response. And of course, we complicate this even more with some of the things that we're sharing with loved ones might directly or indirectly impact them. Whether it's the new idea and the new business, it's going to just take our time and attention away from them, their relationship. So now we're over here. That was a big part with my family. When I started to build this business and Lally and I were building it together, I knew that as an entrepreneur now, which was a different type than a clinical psychologist who had a very standard schedule. And when I was off, I was off, right? This was now a different world I was in. And I knew my family had expectations of Sunday dinner, of family vacations. And I saw a future where I'm not going to have the time, literally, to be there at these moments for you. So some of it is, right, we are sharing something that logistically, objectively, in terms of time, attention, bandwidth, it might be taking us away. It might also challenge, right? Who might we now be? And to this person, if we become this powerful, successful, fulfilled, I don't know, different person now as a result of these different choices. Now it can get interpersonal. It can activate their own insecurity. Oh, wow, you're doing something really great in your life, and I'm over here feeling stuck and stagnant. And, right. So now the complications and the reactions, again, like I said earlier, that come from them, their own past, their own childhood, their own insecurity, their own conditioning, still, though, we find ourselves then on the receiving end of it. And then we don't feel supported. Some of us feel very resentful, especially if we get those very kind of fight driven. Sometimes when
Mm.
someone wants to aggressively tell us why we're a terrible person, it's because they're just feeling really threatened and challenged, but it's coming out as dominating, control, even threatening type behavior. And again, this doesn't mean that we don't need to put up boundaries and perhaps remove ourselves from some of these conversations, maybe even the relationship. But I just often find myself thinking about the psychology, right? The patterns, like what might be driving this person to react in a way that's not about me. But this doesn't mean to not bypass that it's not hurtful, that we've made ourselves vulnerable. We've shared a new idea, one that maybe we're really excited about, or maybe we're unsure about it. And
Hmm.
now we're not getting that support. So I want to be clear because I am the first to often describe the many moments where my conditioning to over understand and explain away why someone might be acting in a hurtful, unsupportive way to me has resulted, at least for me personally, of continuing to allow someone to act in a supportive, hurtful, sometimes even aggressive role because I've overstepped
Yep.
that limit. That's a very real part of this conversation because some of us really might come to the end of these moments with loved ones and they might not be able to be supportive. We might have to put up a boundary, whether it's so that we can give time and attention to the new thing that we want to create, or whether it's because they really can't be supportive or being aggressive or tearing down. Now we really might have to build a bit of a boundary insulation, at least for now, until maybe deeper change can take place.
Yeah. And it sounds like along the way of bringing something new to life, there are so many different like initiations. There's these like relational ones where you're met with people being like, I don't understand you, or straight up are shaming you or criticizing you, and the discomfort that that brings and our propensity to want to fawn or whatever it is that we do. There's these like, external challenges, like financial challenges. So like there's all these like initiations that you've had to walk through relationally, financially, spiritually, emotionally to to become who you've become and therefore to create what you've created. And I'm really curious to hear how like the tools that you have learned throughout your life, especially in this more holistic journey, how those things supported you in those moments where you're faced with that challenge and then that next challenge and then that next challenge, because those inner resources are like the only thing that can get you through.
And I really want to emphasize, even the way you're beautifully wording it, Chelsea, is it is about developing the inner resources to get you through. Pause. It's not to create an unrealistic, not possible scenario where there aren't difficult moments to get through, right? Because I do think sometimes the expectation that we put on ourselves, maybe on the world around us, perhaps even the hope that we construct is that we get to this place where it's not hard anymore, where there's not challenges, where even our old habits that I can talk readily about, I can write books about them, hundreds of pages about all of my habits. But that's not to say that they immediately don't challenge me and or become the embodiment of who I am in any given moment. So even your kind of who I'm becoming, I'm still an evolution, right? It's not that we just like lock into a new plateau. I'm like, oh, those old habits, I'll never see those again. That's absolutely not the case. The habits are there, the patterns are there, the beliefs are still there, right? The compulsion to do the old things, I can find myself, being pulled in the direction. And sometimes I can live in those habits. But what has changed is inconsistent work, even in moments of inconsistency. I talk about this often in terms of habit development because those are the moments we want to beat ourselves up. When we string together a couple days, a couple weeks, sometimes even a couple months of a habit, and then we fall off. And I can't tell you how much I see this in the circle, right? Oh my gosh, I fell off and I never gonna, I'm back to the start, right? And so for me, it was building, rebuilding a trust. And that came with a lot of moments, sometimes for weeks and months on end. I will even just share with you, I've gone through a several months this past year have been very challenging and transitional for me. And for me, those are the moments where, again, I can write books about all the habits that sustain me, which for me begin with self care in the body, going to sleep early, waking up early, moving my body throughout the day. For me, it's a lot of stretching to release all of the emotions in my fascia that continues to keep my body stressed. It's thinking about nutritionally and making sure I'm eating nutrient dense foods and not eating the sugar that I love to eat and doing all of the things throughout the day to pay attention to my breath and calm myself down when I'm getting activated and doing those things more consistently than not, understanding that I'm not always going to keep the habits that sustain me or allow me to be resourced. And then also knowing my pattern is when life gets stressful, the first thing that go out the window are all of those habits, especially when they're based in my body, because I spent so much time in the safety of my mind thinking. And now, especially in moments where part of my stress is the busyness of a business that I love, of a book that I can't wait to get out into the world in March, and deadlines that are created around that. Right. So, with all of this stuff to focus on, it is so easy for me to go back into what on the surface could still be celebrated as a habit. Wow, I've gotten 4 books out in 5 whatever years. That's crazy, some people might say. Look at celebrated even, right? So I can push. And sometimes that becomes my protection. Let me just only focus on this book because I have a lot of other stress that's happening in my life. Thankfully, I do have the capability to kind of zone in because for me, that zoning is a protection. It's distanced myself from what's really going on. I have the capacity to pay attention or to direct attention. So I can get really caught up in, editing a chapter for hours of a day. And then, oh, I didn't think about what's really more painful beneath the surface. So while I can share all of the habits that I know sustain me and allow me to have resources that include not just thinking and doing projects in my mind throughout the day, those are the moments where, so when life got hard recently, out went my body and my focus went solely to work. And how can I distract myself with thinking about something again that I'm very excited to put out into the world? And so the more recent past few weeks have been honest rebuilding back, because what has changed over the past 5+ decade even is I have a trust. I know now that, yeah, I did stop doing things that I should have absolutely been doing, especially now with stress being high. And as a result of that, I had a lot of reactive moments. I saw a lot of old patterns. I did a lot of appeasing. And then when I couldn't stand the resentment that built up from appeasing you for so long, I would explode and scream and dominate and yell. And I saw myself cycle through that enough. And I knew, well, Nicole, part of the reason why you're not resourced is because you're not resourcing yourself. But instead of criticizing and judging and making it even more of a difficult, painful, unresourced experience, I did different this time. I said, okay, I'm actually just going to pause. I'm going to take some things that I would like to maintain and be able to be doing off my plate. I'm going to really focus on the priority, the things that have to happen, even knowing that if I really wanted, I could probably intervene and change those too. But I'm choosing to want those things to have to happen, and the rest I'm going to give myself grace. I'm going to take off the pressure for now, and then I'm going to gradually, as I began to feel ready, which was in the past month or so, I'm going to start to build back into those habits that sustain me. So I would again be lying if I were to say, oh, well, this is the prescription and I do this day in and day out. It doesn't matter what's happening out there and I'm able to be maintained and calm and grounded. And it's not. Like there's moments where things unravel. I'm not doing the things that I know would help me, would resource me. I'm being more compassionate and graceful because I do know that I have a choice available to me in any given moment, and that I do have that trust that I will return to the choices that will allow me to more often than not operate in my newer habits. But again, I share this because some of us, I do think we have the expectation of the magic wand where we are just different. Life feels different. There's no more challenges, there's no more backsliding. And it just is, we're just new day in and day out. And that's just simply not the case. At least not the case that I have lived.
Yeah, and it's just speaking to the human condition, the human experience that like the more stress we're under, the more likely we are to go into protective or avoidant patterns. And it's to me, the human journey is forgetting so that you can remember. And that the forgetting isn't a problem. It's the forgetting is the opportunity to remember. And like you said, trusting that you're gonna come back to it, trusting yourself, trusting that you know how to get back to that, trusting that it doesn't mean anything negative about you if you forget, because how very human of us to forget and then we remember and then we forget and then we remember. And that's part of the evolution too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful thing. And then to live in the uncertainty
Yeah.
as we build that bridge, right? When we don't yet know, when we're not full in memory,
Yeah.
when it does just feel, you know, undefinable. That's, I
Yeah.
think, when we feel compelled to grasp, sometimes for old definitions
Yeah. Some
that
sort
don't
of
serve.
certainty. Some
Mhm,
sort of certainty.
mhm.
Yeah. And so this journey, I'm hearing like the common through line is how willing are you to be uncertain? How willing are you to be in the unknown?
Yeah,
And knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable and not making that mean that you shouldn't move forward because it's uncomfortable.
yeah. And I will be the first to say I became so practiced and so good at staying in my comfort zone, at
Hmm.
so quickly dismissing as just not for me all that felt uncomfortable immediately. And I
Yeah.
can't help but continue to emphasize how so much of who I am now being, at least, has pushed me outside of that comfort zone, has been just foundationally,
Mm.
not what I've been immediately good at. And so
Yeah.
many moments have been of even now of I'm able to catch the instinct of wanting to quit when it doesn't immediately come easy. I've almost come to be able to enjoy the challenge, so much so that
Yeah.
I'm hiring for the first time ever a speaking coach to actually teach me how to, because I've never had any sort of formal training to do any of this.
Wow.
And I would have felt so self-conscious. It wouldn't have been like a fun skill to try and hone or practice. It would have, again, been something I just wanted to avoid until the next
Mm.
podcast where I, had to show up to have a conversation. And now it's something that I'm like, okay, I can keep challenging my edge a little bit and I can push
Mm.
myself and actually create a relationship with this thing that was something that I wanted to run away from and avoid that can be a work in progress now.
Yeah, and there's always like new edges, like we get out of our comfort zone a little bit and then we realize, oh my God, I survived. And then we can push it a little bit more and we have more capacity to
Yes.
be with more discomfort. And then we're like, okay, cool, I survived. And there's
Yes.
still things that feel out of our comfort zone, but then the next thing we know, like you said, oh, here I am doing this thing that once would have felt
Yep.
really uncomfortable, but now I have more capacity to push that edge.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last thing that I'll ask you, and again, thank you so much for sharing all of this. What would you say to someone who has a vision or a passion that goes beyond the traditional norm? I know we've been talking about this a lot, but if you could share like words that you wish you had in the beginning when you were starting this journey.
I mean, I would just send, I don't know what specific words, but I would celebrate
Mm.
the vision and the acceptance of a possibility because that's where it,
Yeah.
it, it begins before we even can put something out there to be defined by anyone outside of ourselves as outside of a norm. We have to have birthed, the possibility inside.
Mm.
And the reality is I've yet to meet a human who's just not so foundationally conditioned by so every aspect of their life that they've become limited in their own vision of possibility. So
Mm.
anyone out there who even sees a scenario or a different way of doing or thinking or being about something is something huge to celebrate because that to
Wow.
me is just such a beautiful part of humanity, of the fact that there is so much difference out there that sadly we have
Yeah.
been conditioned out of. So I would want to celebrate that in that individual, whomever you
Wow.
might be listening, and also just continue to affirm that there are people who can similarly see, hopefully that there was some value in, maybe gaining understanding, as hurtful and disappointing as it might be not to have our loved ones seeing and supporting what we see or the possibility or the vision that we want to live into, that there are, people and communities and others to connect with that will wholeheartedly show up in
Yeah.
celebration, and also to continue to urge all of us to be our own celebration,
Mm.
to notice these moments. And that's why I began with kind of acknowledging that about the self. Wow, look at, I have a vision, kind of defining ourselves as a visionary. I've created and I have, I'm holding a vision. That's incredible. Again, in this world, and
Yeah.
we celebrate ourselves before we have those maybe objective people around us to show up in celebration, but to know that they are there as well.
Wow. Yeah, to even just recognize the gift that it is to have a vision, a dream, a passion in a world that's really maybe numbed itself or conditioned itself out of that altogether. And to like nurture that little seed that's been planted, even if it's, seems like the full manifestation of it is so far away. I love that. Wow. Thank you so much. I want to plug the Self Healer Circle before we wrap up today. Tell us, tell us how people can join,
Yeah.
and what sorts of amazing things that are inside your online community.
Sure. Thank you. And so, yeah, Self Healer Circle was born out of this ultimate evolution, as I started to not only understand how desperate many of us were, quite internationally speaking, for this information, but how lonely, how much we were in need of community. As I really started to understand the nervous system, our human nervous system, I really understood the importance of relationships, of safe, secure relationship, and so the idea for Self Healer Circle was really born out of everything that we've just been
Mm.
discussing here today together. And so I landed on a membership model somewhat, gosh, 5+ years ago now, and it has grown and evolved so much over the past 5 years. It is just an incredible space where every month, members from around the world join together virtually and we learn about a new topic. This month, we're talking about self-doubt. We have workshops and we built our own Facebook. It's not Facebook, but it's in a private membership portal so members can interact with other members. And our newest initiative, which is so super amazing and great, in May, we started to have live virtual groups, and incredible facilitators like yourself have joined us. So, one of the major, not only joining together in community is kind of a priority in the circle, it's also to expose members to different ways of perspectives and different ways of
Mm.
thinking and learning and healing and being. So a lot of the workshops that we host are not just hosted by myself. We have outside presenters come in. So similarly, when I started to want to offer members a more interactive, interpersonal, video-based way to host a virtual group, I thought nowhere could we expand and diversify by having outside facilitators come in so that members can really get a feel for just different styles
Hmm.
being, of doing the work, and also to connect members with resources. So the circle is a beautiful learning interactive community. In January, actually, when we'll open up again for enrollment, you can check out
Cool.
selfhealercircle.com for more information, jump on the wait list. And coming January, the membership will now be available on an app. So make it even more user friendly. I'm hopefully evolving to having even more virtual live groups throughout a given month, and really just be a place now in your hand where you can learn and grow with other members.
That is so spectacular. And it's been such an honor to be part of the Self Healer Circle. I ran my group yesterday on self-doubt, and every single time I'm blown away by the community and the culture that you've created and the culture that everyone has co-created. It's so supportive, so open. It can be nerve-wracking, like, okay, I'm going to lead a group of, I think my first group was 200 people. I'm like, this could get wild. And it really, like, again, the amount of support and just encouragement and connection and everyone celebrating each other and being like sharing openly. I was like, wow, this is remarkable. This is remarkable. So again, it's an incredible place for anyone to learn, to grow, to interact. And I know you have like, you can either do it monthly or pay annually. It's like such an accessible resource for anyone. And so I'm happy to I'll share the website link in the show notes. Definitely get on that wait list. I'm excited that enrollment will be opening in January. It's a great way to kick off
Yes.
2026.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, one of our biggest desires is to keep the membership affordable so
Yeah.
that people because we have such an international community, really want to make sure, again, that these conversations, these tools, these resources are accessible. So we always urge members to join, to download the resources, even if they can only join for a month,
Mm.
to take with them, whatever it is because at this point now we have an entire content library. We've been releasing a course one a month, every month since the
Yeah,
beginning. So we have like 60 plus courses. So at this point, when you join, you can put even in keywords and come up with, multiple different courses, resources, workshops that can address each different content area. And we're only going to continue to expand.
it's incredible. It's incredible. So yeah, if anyone out there is interested in holistic healing, inner child work, parts work, somatic healing, um, trauma-informed work, understanding patterns from childhood and how that impacts you today, conscious relationships, like all the good stuff can be found in this community. And again, I'm so grateful to be part of bringing this work to more people in the world. It's such a gift.
Well, thank you. We're so grateful, Chelsea, to have you just as a
Thank you.
being in the world. Of course, I'm beyond grateful for you to be a part of Self Healer Circle as you are. And thank you for your community for so warmly welcoming me here today.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so very much. Thanks everyone for listening in on this incredible conversation. And I can't wait to chat with you next time.